up, Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's try that again.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was me. I was like, oh no, what happened to my sound? Because it's usually, let's be honest, it's usually me.
Yeah, I was about to say Ash got into the room and was like, her sound wasn't working, and so then I gave her a that was deliberate from me. I wanted to freak her out right there.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished.
There you go. Welcome to the show. Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:30, and that means it's time for Why We Vote. We might need to
so much to talk about
the name of that, but yeah, I do want to before we get into our sponsors, we'll jump right in and we got a Badlands boost here from Faith and Freedom. Appreciate the work you two do and the information you provide to educate the public when it comes to elections.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Also, try and stop us because we're both completely and totally obsessed with the issue.
Yes, this is also very true. This is also very true. All right, let's jump into our sponsors. And first up, we've got Silent. Introducing Silent. Empower your right to disconnect with Silent Faraday cage bags. In a world where tech never sleeps, our mission is to keep you safe, private, and healthy. Our patented technology shields your device from hacking, tracking, and EMF radiation, giving you autonomy over your digital life. Disconnecting sparks creativity, strengthens relationships, and brings peace of mind. With Silent, you get effortless gear built with integrity and always staying one step ahead to protect your data and your security. Choose Silent and reclaim your freedom to disconnect. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/Faraday and use promo code Badlands to snag your 10% discount. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/Faraday, promo code Badlands. All right. And then speaking of election integrity, let's get a word from our friend Mike Lindell over at MyPillow.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
I'll tell you, you cannot beat the designer gusset on that My Pillow.
Yeah.
So everybody should get My Pillows, and as always, I have to tell you, the topper will change your life.
I agree.
Topper. Yeah,
I agree. Ash convinced me to buy it. She convinced me to buy it, and I bought it, and Christy and I love it. So
yeah, it's awesome. MyPillow.com, promo code Badlands.
And then let's get a word from Soft Disclosure.
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real: tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post-shave, anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Ancient care, modern truth.
Soft Disclosure. All right. Soft Disclosure. Yeah. All right. Smash that thumbs up. And
here.
I got vanilla citrus too.
Also, the lip balms are coming out, I believe, by the end of the month, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, though. So the lip balms are awesome.
Yeah, Christy loves those too. All right, so on tonight's show, by the way, smash that thumbs up. As you can see, it's right up there. We're going to go over Ed Martin's statement on the pardons, because I started reading this and I was like, holy shit, this is an absolutely incredible document. It's a little bit long, but I think it'll be worth it. It's probably going to take up the whole show, to be honest with you, but that's okay. We'll have sidebar discussions during it. And Ash sent me this, and I don't know that I've seen this, but maybe we should play
this. So this was the 10th, which was the day that we flew in, I think. Or the day that I flew in. Anyway, you drove. But so I totally missed this. And this is absolutely fire.
It was definitely not the 10th that we flew in. That was this Tuesday.
Oh. What?
Yeah, I don't know how I missed this either. I think I saw it, and I saw the long form and was like,
oh, it was Monday. Okay.
And I bookmarked it. Yeah, Monday. Excuse me, Monday. But yeah, let's play it. Here we go.
Anytime you see wholesale misconduct and targeting American people, whether it's illegal or it's outside of the term limits or anything else, excuse me, the statute of limitations, you still have to take a look at it. You don't get to say walk away when there's misconduct. So we now have regular misconduct against American citizens. When you see that, you say, let's go figure out what happened. And we're going to get to the bottom of it. I'm very confident it's happening faster than people can realize. And look, I've told you before, I get a lot of grief from the TV people. If you do something wrong and we can prosecute you, we're going to find it and get you. If you did it and you somehow dodged accountability, we're going to name you. And as I've said before, we're going to name and shame people. They deserve to be embarrassed for what they did to people. They deserve to have shame for what they did to people. And that's part of the process. That's always part of the process. So we're really excited about the truth getting out. And more importantly, I've heard from people this morning that have said, thank you to President Trump for being on their side. Anytime you...
Okay.
All right.
So, you saw, I believe, that he also said he's looking into Tina Peters.
Yes.
Right. So the weaponization czar is also the election integrity czar, and he's bringing up Tina Peters and weaponization, in relatively short order, one after the other. Now, my position on this, we've heard a lot of people say they need to declare her a federal election whistleblower, right? To move her from state custody to federal custody. My position on this is that the whistleblowing on election stuff, what was found in Mesa County, Tina Peters can't testify to because it's hearsay. From a legal standpoint, it's hearsay. She didn't take the images. She didn't analyze the images. She didn't produce the report. She's not the expert. So that testimony would not convince a judge to move her. However, weaponization of government, she is a material witness to. She has firsthand knowledge on multiple levels of how the government was being weaponized against election deniers, right? And that is potentially something that I think because especially weaponization of government comes with retribution, right? And she's being held by the state. And so the fact that this is coming up now, to me, that's her best chance. In addition to the First Amendment appeal that is being heard right now in the federal court, which I think is a great chance for her to get out of prison. For her to be moved, I think the weaponization of government angle, for her to be moved as a material witness, that's the best one. And it seems like sort of heading in that direction. So that video, I totally missed it Monday, I guess, when it came out. But yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yes.
Free Tina Peters.
Absolutely. And then of course he posted this picture yesterday, and that is
it's
Kurt Olson, who has been on this program many times, 3 or 4 times, especially back in 2022-23 around the Kerry Lake trials. But he is I think he's like a special government employee and advisor to the president in election integrity. So,
and if anybody has the record of cases across the country for where election integrity, I think, meets weaponization of government, because you have the government weaponized to prevent election claims, allegations, malfeasance from being heard, right? So I think election integrity meets weaponization of government in a number of different ways. And if there's anybody that has the record to prosecute across the country on the election cases that were squashed, misadjudicated, where there's maybe corrupt judges or things like Ryan Macias reading off a screen, right? And the judge being like, nothing I can do about it. He was in the other room, like he was there on the property. All of those. It's Kurt Olson. He has that record. He spent the past 2 years building that record across the country. It's very exciting stuff that's happening, and people need to stop dooming out.
Yes, and I do believe, and I've now heard speculations that we're going to see some movement on this within the next month or two. So yeah, we'll see. I'm like I said, I'm very bullish on where we're going with election integrity right now with this administration, and this document right here from Ed Martin definitely. Ash, do you remember when Ed Martin was first nominated by President Trump to be the U.S. Attorney for District of Columbia for D.C.? And I was like, this would be the best move ever. Like this would he is the Phyllis Schlafly hawk, right? That will go after all this. And then Schlafly, excuse me, Schlafly, excuse me. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Do you remember
successfully fought the Equal Rights Amendment?
Do you remember what Tom Tillis said about Ed Martin?
No.
When he refused, I think it was Tillis, right? It was Tillis that refused to vote for him.
And he came out. Refresh it.
Well, he came out and said, "I would vote for Ed Martin for any other U.S. attorney office in the country, just not D.C." And I think there was a reason for that. And I think we're learning what that reason was.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find.
Does the audience? Yeah, they hear an echo too. What's happening?
Yeah, it's because I had the sound on that screen.
Brian's fault.
Yeah, it was because I'm sharing screen. It's not in my browse tab, whatever. Hold on. Let me see if I can find this Tom Tillis quote real quick. Tom Tillis, Ed Martin, U.S. Attorney, and see if I can find this quote, because we talked about this quite a bit when it happened. Because we were pretty ticked up. Okay, here it is. Now I got to share a new screen, and I'm getting the spinning circle. Okay, there it is. All right, so let me share this screen just so guys can get an idea of who Ed Martin is.
I don't believe he's being advanced to the markup, and I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th, and he built a compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions, but where we probably have a difference is I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time. Whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable, but I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th, and that's probably where most of the friction was.
I see. So he disagreed with you on that?
Well, no, I have.
So just to be clear here, Tom Tillis is saying that he made compelling arguments about 1512. Well, guess what? 1512 was overturned by the Supreme Court, for first and foremost. And then the other thing is he is literally going after Ed Martin because he was an attorney for people that were J6ers. He represented J6ers. Like constitutionally, as you are, in this country, we have a presumption of innocence and you have a right to legal counsel. Tom Tillis is punishing Ed Martin right here for representing J6ers.
He made compelling cases about 1512 that were maybe heat of the moment. Our justice system is set up so that heat of the moment emotions of men cannot drive the convictions of people. And what he's saying is we need to protect that. We need to protect our ability to be super freaking emotional and prosecute people whatever way we want. If he was actually interested in justice, then the fact that Ed Martin made those compelling cases in a place where they're all very snuggly and ruled by their emotions would make him the perfect guy for the job. But we want to protect our ability to be corrupt. Fuck this guy.
Yep. Now let's keep going.
To say that Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining how there were people that probably got caught up in it. But they made the stupid decision to come through a building that had been breached and that the police officers and others were saying stay away. So the difference wasn't that they should be charged, in my estimation. It's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the
Brian, why was the police line breached on January 6th?
Because half of them went to go. Well, first off, they gassed themselves, but half of them went to go investigate the pipe bombs. And then they had expired ammunition, and somebody shot a round that's supposed to travel 200 to 300 yards, and it only went about 40 feet. And they gassed the entire police line, so they had to retreat.
They gassed themselves. Not only did the police have to retreat, but there was thousands of people backed up from that line. There was nowhere to go, and they weren't being violent. They weren't even being contentious, except in little pockets where they were yelling at cops, but there was no violence. The reason that line moved at all is because the Capitol Police misfired and gassed the police line.
Yep.
And all of those people that were just trying to start, I was gassed on January 6th, not in that moment, way later, without warning or cause by anyone. And I thought I was going to die. It was the choking, the burning, the searing pain. You have an involuntary action. They gassed those people on that line. There was nowhere to go, and they breached the police line. And now they should all be in prison? Fuck that guy.
Yep.
6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people to put those people in trouble. They made a stupid decision, and they disgraced the United States by absolutely destroying the Capitol.
Agreed.
I can't have any patience.
It sounds like your concerns were not alleviated.
But let me be very clear, though. Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining the one area that I think he's probably right, that there were some people that were over-prosecuted. But there were some, 200 or 300 of them, that should have never gotten a pardon, and he agreed with that. But the disagreement there had more to do. If Mr. Martin were being put forth as a U.S. attorney for any district except the district where January 6th happened, the protest happened, I'd probably support him, but not in this district.
We want to protect our corruption. Let me be very clear, Senator Tillis. You have zero excuse to not know the facts of January 6th. You have access to way more information than we have. We have to rely on Woo's News and citizen journalists who captured what actually happened, because all of you people lied to us about it for years. So let us be very clear. Done. You're done. The time for this kind of nonsense, we have to prosecute anybody that crossed the police line. 300 people should not be able to get a pardon. What? You don't have any say in who gets a pardon, actually. What state? Who's voting?
I didn't mean to trigger you this early into the show.
January 6th is one of those ones that makes it, because they all lied, and the Congress people have no excuse. The Congress people, with every lie that's been revealed, they've just sort of shapeshifted with it, but they have more access to information than any of us do about January 6th.
Yep. All right, let's dive into this. On that note, let's dive into this statement that Ed Martin put out, this memo. Final pardon statement of U.S. Pardon Attorney Edward Martin Jr. on comprehensive pardons for contingent electors and affiliates. Introduction. For over 200 years, this nation held elections as our framers envisioned, by gathering at the polls in person on election day to cast our ballots and vote our conscience. Whoever prevailed, citizens would be confident that their votes would count without dilution or diminishment. This process endured unfailingly through the best and worst of our history. Defying war, disease, and every manner of natural disaster, our polls remained open for our citizens to gather and perform their civic duty. This proud tradition died in 2020. I think it died long before that, but I get what he's saying here. This proud tradition died in 2020. For the first time in American history, partisan state and local officials, relying on narrow exceptions for absentee voting and signature verification, attempted to conduct a fully remote presidential election, 2020 presidential election or election. These officials did so despite a complete lack of infrastructure to securely process and verify large volumes of mail-in ballots, while ignoring bipartisan warnings regarding the extraordinary risk posed by such a course. Worse, officials aided by private partisan organizations and nearly $1 billion in private funding repeatedly and blatantly violated a myriad of laws that state legislatures, vested with the sole and inviolable constitutional duty to direct the manner of presidential elections, had erected to prevent fraud and corruption. I'm going to disagree with him on that.
Which part?
I didn't catch that when I first read it, that state legislatures are vested with the sole and inviolable constitutional duty to direct the manner of presidential elections. That's not true. Congress can intervene in federal elections. That would include
and has a
the
whole
United
bunch
States.
of times in history.
Yeah, so that's the one.
Going back to Thomas Jefferson's election, that was decided in Congress.
Yeah, I don't understand that, and I look, this is written by an attorney, right, at the DOJ. Ed Martin is
But Congress is the states, though, right? It's essentially the representatives. And back when the Constitution was drafted, the senators were appointed by the state legislatures.
Hold on, let me. So Article 1, Section 8, as it says, the power, not Section 8, excuse me, Article 1, Section 4. I don't know why I said 8 there. The time, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. Now, I don't know when the elections clause, so that doesn't make sense, the place of choosing senators, because our
it was before the 17th Amendment.
Right. The 17th Amendment kind of takes that away. So does the 17th Amendment cancel that out? You know, that's a good question right there.
It should be, if you go, hang on. Well, don't hang on. Keep going, but I'll look it up.
Oh, well, so yeah, that's the only thing. And this is just broadly, the state legislators are responsible for the elections. However, Congress can interject in federal elections. So your congressmen, your senators, now your senators after the 17th Amendment, and your president. So I'm a little confused on that, but I don't know. If anybody from the DOJ is listening, shoot me a DM and clarify that if you can.
Article 2, Section 4.
Yeah, Article 1, Section 4.
Article 1, Section 4. No, it does not cancel out. Time, place, and states set the time, place, and manner of congressional elections. Congress may at any time make law or alter such regulations. It changes the time, place, and manner of choosing senators, which is now popular. Election.
There's case law that they can
it supplements, does not replace.
Wait, what supplements?
The 17th Amendment supplements how senators are choosing. Because it's written choosing.
See, people listen. So here's the message that I got. The federal government has jurisdiction to ensure that basic rights of United States citizenship and a fundamental process of representative democracy remain uncorrupted. Federal courts now regard the right to vote in a fairly counted election as a constitutionally protected feature of the United States citizenship. Reynolds v. Sims, 1964.
Didn't Totenberg kind of change that, though?
I don't know.
We've got
all right. Let's read on. That's kind of tit for tat. The rest of this is absolute fire, so it's definitely worth going through. At the same time, biased media failed to accurately inform the American people of the unlawful actions taken to deprive our country, or spell check, guys, our country, of a free and fair election. Our founding fathers prioritized freedom of the press, enshrining it in the First Amendment because they recognized its role as a cornerstone of a free society. They believed an informed citizenry was necessary for self-governance, and a press free from government control could provide the information needed to check power. Then please repeal the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act.
By the way, spell check wouldn't have caught that.
Yeah, I know, because it's county, not country.
Yeah,
AI might have, but AI proofreading might have caught it. Prior to and during the election,
somebody who was like super scared of AI, you really like it now.
I've said I'm going to use it. It's still like on a much more macro scale. It scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Okay. Prior to and during the election, however, both legacy and powerful social media blatantly and aggressively censored information harmful to then candidate Biden's campaign. Most egregiously, the media led a disinformation campaign to wrongly discredit validated facts gathered from Biden's son's laptop, which laid bare Biden family's corruption and unfitness to lead our country. Following the election, this pattern of unrestrained censorship continued, with legacy and social media wrongly and uncritically suppressing widespread and legitimate concerns regarding the integrity of the election. The 2020 election was so marred by massive, covert social media censorship operations instigated by federal officials operating to suppress freedom of speech about election integrity issues, including the activities of CISA and the FBI, and their collaboration with the so-called Election Integrity Partnership operated by the Stanford Internet Observatory. That was proud when I read that, because as far as I know, I texted Ash right away. As far as I know, I'm the first person that reported on the censorship from the EIP in the Long Fuse report, where they specifically admitted in words that they used government officials to censor through social media companies. Like, right there in front of you. I could be wrong. There could be somebody that beat me to it, so I'm not saying anything there, but I'm just pointing that out.
It's doubtful. What year?
It was like 2022.
Yeah,
it was
it's doubtful that somebody
beat
beat you to it, because most of the journalists out there were massive pussies on this issue back in 2022. Now everybody wants to pretend like they were talking about election integrity, but Brian lost his YouTube channel. I never had a YouTube channel, so I can't say that, but Brian did.
Yeah. Describing this as arguably the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history. That's Missouri v. Biden. Among other things, the covert operation caused the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story on Twitter and Facebook, as well as the deplatforming of the New York Post on Twitter for 2 weeks in late October 2020, directly orchestrated by FBI officials as described therein.
Pause for a second. That was,
Yes.
do you remember that?
Yeah.
They banned the New York Post, the oldest newspaper in the United States of America. Twitter deplatformed for publishing a true story.
They would they would not let you send DMs with that article in it.
Yeah.
You could not DM it to somebody.
Yeah, we really saw what the platform was capable of in terms of censorship when the Hunter Biden laptop story dropped.
Yep.
And we, of course, this is old news. It's not new, but just thinking back to where we were back when the Hunter Biden laptop thing was going on, they banned the New York Post for their reporting in the United States of America.
100%. And look at where we are now. I mean, I know people are getting frustrated, but we're leaps and bounds ahead. We're live streaming to YouTube right now, reading all this. That's leaps and bounds ahead in the information war, guys. Moreover, for decades prior to the 2020 election, responsible commentators across the political spectrum widely and consistently acknowledged that voting by mail possesses significant election security risks, especially when conducted without appropriate safeguards, such as rigorous voter verification, restrictions on ballot delivery, and careful chain of custody controls. For example, in Crawford v. Marion County, the U.S. Supreme Court stated that the prospect of fraudulent voting, quote, perpetrated using absentee ballots, quote, end quote, demonstrates, quote, that not only is the risk of voter fraud real, but that it could affect the outcome of a close election. Likewise, the bipartisan Carter-Baker Commission, co-chaired by former President Jimmy Carter, emphasized that, quote, absentee ballots remain the largest potential source of voter fraud, end quote, and that, quote, absentee balloting is vulnerable to abuse in several ways, and that absentee balloting has been a major source of fraud, and that the states need to do more to prevent absentee ballot fraud. The Commission
Since
on Federal
Abraham Lincoln, by the way, just 1864.
The Commission on Federal Election Reform, Building Confidence in U.S. Elections report. Okay, that's just citing it. Similarly, the U.S. DOJ's Manual on Federal Prosecution of Election Offenses, established or published by its Election Crimes Branch, notes that, quote, absentee ballots are particularly susceptible to fraudulent abuse, and describes, quote, absentee ballot frauds committed both with and without the voter's participation. The U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Prosecution of Election Offenses. Nevertheless, in the 2020 election, this long accepted wisdom was suddenly ignored, and a whole host of safeguards established in the laws of the states for the integrity of voting by mail were deliberately, summarily, and unlawfully swept aside, even as voting by mail exploded to epidemic proportions under the pretext of COVID. I'll read one more paragraph and then I'll hand it over to you. The impact of these twin threats to the integrity of the 2020 presidential election, the massive mail ballot onslaught, coupled with the suppression of the left-leaning media of concerns about the election processes, cannot be overstated. The election of 2020 was seriously and significantly marred, and the American people were not supposed to talk about it, much less try to do anything about it.
So good.
This is absolute fire. We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. Go ahead.
We've got a little bit of good. So it's all very good. Notwithstanding this unprecedented media censorship campaign, ordinary citizens throughout the nation courageously and accurately reported widespread fraud, corruption, anomalies, and unlawful irregularities they had witnessed during and following the election, tainting the integrity of the election results in at least 7 states. More, for the record. These reports supported in many, there were teams in all 50 states looking at election stuff, communicating with elected officials. And yeah, 7 of them are material and, 5 of those are swing states, but all 50. These reports supported in many instances by sworn affidavits, expert testimony, and reports demonstrating votes cast illegally, but nonetheless counted, credibly alleged significant deviations from bedrock election security measures, such as signature verification, chain of custody, and voter registration laws and requirements, among other egregious departures from duly enacted election laws and procedures.
Okay, pause there. This is what we did. This is how we got started. This is how I got started. This is how, Ashe got involved in this. This is how, the guys over in the band, Bahizzi and Nick Moseder and Neil Johnson, this is how we all got involved in it. We were interviewing the people who were witness to this. We were interviewing the people who put on the record sworn declarations. We weren't, talking about, we had some fun every once in a while with theories and stuff that was out there. We were the ones, me and Nick Moseder went to New Hampshire and covered the audit in person. Nick went up there a couple times to cover their audit in person. We were talking with the people that wrote the bill. Ken Eyring wrote the bill to get the audit in New Hampshire. All of that shit, we got kicked off of social media platforms for talking about. These were the things that the real journalists were not fucking doing.
Yeah, I was not being a journalist then. I was blogging a little bit, but mostly I was organizing, and we were getting affidavits and finding the data in the state of Colorado and all of those things, and we were punished for it. We were punished, and nobody will convince me it wasn't a state action. And I think based on the contents of this letter, the direction things are going, and the appeals process, I think one day we're going to see that actually laid bare, and it's going to be a glorious day. We're going to have cocktails and celebrate.
For whoever's with the DOJ that's listening, can you guys get some of us YouTubers made whole? We lost a lot of income when that happened and struggled pretty hard because this is what we were doing for a living, trying to save our country. And we found a way to be able to do it for a living. Yeah. And we got absolutely drug over the rails by Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the one, his administration is the one that colluded with the federal government to censor us. That is a First Amendment violation. We need to be made whole.
You probably need to sue.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to sue the DOJ. We need to sue DHS. We need to sue all of these organizations that were colluding to censor us.
Yeah, and in suing, you could probably take on 230 protections because that's what they're going to claim. But they made an editorial choice to remove you. Now, if they did that at the demand of the federal government, you have a claim you have a claim against the government, but you have to be able to prove that, which is difficult.
They've said as much. YouTube came out and acknowledged it, that they were under pressure from the Biden administration. Zuckerberg acknowledged the same thing.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a problem with this because this is like Yoel Roth rewriting the history of what happened at Twitter. A lot of those people in those tech companies did not have to have their arms twisted by the federal government to take down the speech of Trump supporters. They were more than happy to do it. They were all on board with it. When you go back and you look at their rules and all those kinds of things, it was a conspiracy. And we're talking about public-private partnership. So, I mean, I think you have a viable claim, and it would be good. That would be a fun lawsuit, Brian.
Yeah, somebody, if we got anybody listening, somebody put out an X post. I'll find it and just put class action ? Or something along those lines, and yeah. We'll know. All right, carry on.
Likewise, reports of outright fraud poured in from around the country, including allegations of fraudulent voter registrations, corrupted voting machines, double scanning ballots, trailers of missing ballots, the purging of records to prevent audits, unlawful threats against election officials to force the certification of an election fraught with problems. Remember them threatening, Mark Elias and his friends threatening people if they didn't certify the freaking elections? Threatening elected officials. The department refused to investigate these critical allegations and ignored the deliberate actions of partisan officials to subvert state law. Patriotic Americans who attempted to raise credible allegations of misconduct in election issues were marginalized and subjected to public condemnation and, for purposes of this memorandum, criminal prosecution. The courts also failed the American people. Lawsuits brought to this is where Kurt Olson being in the role that he is in is freaking fire, man.
Yep.
Lawsuits brought to challenge the unconstitutional changes to election laws, procedural violations, ineligible voters, and election irregularities were dismissed by courts on technical and procedural grounds rather than being fully adjudicated on the merits. Indeed, the common narrative that Trump lost all his election challenges fails to consider that there were only 2 evidentiary hearings in the myriad post-election lawsuits, and those were both truncated. Shout out to Rachel Alexander, who had this a year and a half ago. Where is truncated? I lost my place. In the most brazen example of judicial fecklessness, the chief judge of Fulton County, Georgia, was slow to appoint a judge eligible under Georgia law to hear the evidence in the election contest filed by President Trump. See Trump versus Raffensperger. Not until January 4th, 2021, were President Trump's lawyers notified that a judge had finally been appointed, with an initial status conference set for 2 days after the counting of the electoral votes by Congress. The utter failure of the judicial branch of government to hear and take seriously the allegations of election irregularities, violations of state election laws, prevented a thorough examination of evidence and left legitimate grievances unaddressed, further eroding trust in the electoral system. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. I'm going to look something up real quick.
To preserve our nation's right to a free and fair election, state and federal legislators, supported by countless millions of citizens, petitioned Congress to allow state legislatures time to review and consider these irregularities before certifying the results. To support these efforts, the duly constituted Trump electors in 7 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, New Mexico, and Nevada, collectively, the challenged states found themselves in a position in which the outcome of the popular vote in the challenged states was in doubt. Consistent with the hundreds of years of bipartisan tradition, these Trump electors, the contingent slates, met and cast their votes for President Donald J. Trump and transmitted the results to Congress consistent with core Article 2 and 12th Amendment federal functions. Those actions were taken based on sound historical and legal precedent and ensured that legislatures in the challenged states could select the rightful winner of the election in the event the legislatures or the courts determined there had been a flawed calculation of votes or an unconstitutional deviation from state election law resulting in the wrong electoral votes being counted.
Hold on. Breaking news. A Fulton County judge has just dropped 3 of Fani Willis's charges against President Trump and others in Georgia following Willis's ouster from the case. The bogus case is collapsing before our eyes. Throw the whole freaking thing out. So they did last second, right before the case was going to get dismissed automatically, because the whatever it is, the prosecutors, whatever, there's like a group that if a DA gets kicked out off a case, they get to appoint. I can't remember the body's name, but it's a conservative leaning group from what I'm told. They waited till the very last minute to appoint a lawyer. Somebody was telling me it's because they have to have a lawyer in order to dismiss the case. But again, going back to day one of this case, I said this case will never, ever, ever make it to an evidentiary hearing, no matter what. I said that on day one, that this case was not going anywhere. This was the case where Harrison Floyd's attorneys got out there after subpoenaing all the election evidence and said, what if we prove that President Trump won?
Yeah.
The case goes away. And sure enough, it went away.
It went away. That was also the case with the Blue Crest machines, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So much came out in that case. And guess what? Even if the case is dismissed, that record still exists.
Yes, it does.
And it's still under oath, sworn testimony, evidence presented in court. The record is the record, and the record can be cited even if the case was thrown out.
Yeah.
This function.
Hold on real quick. Mags asked, what about Harrison Floyd and all the other people? It's a RICO case, so if it's thrown out against Trump and they were charged with that same charge, I think it gets thrown out for them too.
We shall see.
Okay.
They don't have anybody to prosecute it. There's no political will to prosecute it. Fulton County should be under an audit for sure because of the money stuff that came out during that case. So I think they have much bigger things to worry about. All right. This function, far from novel, has been the appropriate and lawful mechanism for challenging presidential election outcomes throughout our nation's history. See page 9 through 11. So too, in 2020, contingent slates were imperative to ensuring an orderly certification in the event of a failed election. These citizens and their supporters acted openly in consultation with counsel, and while active litigation or other challenges were pending, at all times they sought to uphold fundamental federal constitutional principles in advance of the election certification proceedings before Congress, while acting to ensure, not denigrate, the integrity of the election process. Nonetheless, over the past 4 years, these innocent Trump electors, attorneys, and supporters have paid a heavy price for performing this essential federal function. They have been criminally indicted. 48 individuals, including the president himself and his White House chief of staff, have been indicted by partisan Democrat attorneys general in 3 states and 1 corrupt district attorney in Georgia. Not content to stop there, literally hundreds more Trump supporters, campaign workers, and attorneys have faced unprecedented attacks by federal and state officials, including partisan and politically motivated prosecutions and state bar proceedings, and have been subjected to enormous financial, professional, and emotional duress solely because of their support for President Trump, their role in the 2020 presidential campaign, or their publicly stated concerns about the election. Although the contingent electors acted lawfully within established constitutional traditions, many of them are facing years in prison and massive financial and other hardships. At no time in our country's history have contingent electors or those associated with them been prosecuted criminally for their actions taken to ensure the integrity of the electoral process. These citizens have not violated any law, but instead advanced core constitutional principles to challenge significant and provable irregularities in the election. They deserve immediate relief and freedom from this partisan oppression. Accordingly, and in recognition of their innocence, the need to end a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years, and to continue the, quote, process of national reconciliation, the department recommends that the president grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon for all conduct related to the advice, creation, organization, execution, submission, support, voting, activities, participation in, or advocacy for or of any slate or proposed slate of presidential electors, whether or not recognized by any state or state official in connection with the 2020 presidential election.
Do you see what Ed Martin's doing here? He's showing you how a pardon like this should actually be done. When you look at, the J6 pardons, the preemptive pardons, and everything else like that, we didn't get any acknowledgement like this publicly like this before any action were actually taken. So we would know ahead of time. We just got, hey, we pardoned them. We just woke up one day and all these people are preemptively pardoned. Wait, what's a preemptive pardon? Well, that means that they're pardoned for crimes that we don't know that they committed. So wait, they could have murdered like a family of 4 and they're free to go. Yeah, they're free to go. But we don't know. We're not okay with that. Doesn't matter.
Was some of that too. There were murderers that were pardoned without any sort of explanation. You're totally right. He's not just, writing a summary for a list of people to pardon. He's making the case. He's making the case for why they're, deserving, and why, in this specific case, it was politically motivated witch hunt.
But he's telling us, which is what we never got. Because, again, and I said this when the preemptive pardons first came out, we literally have no idea the extent of the corruption that they went. This can absolutely and very likely could rise all the way up to the level of treason. And yes, the president can pardon treason. I know people say pardon treason's unpardonable. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
So it can rise all the way up to the level of treason. And I don't think anybody in the United States would be, well, maybe some Democrats might be, perhaps, would be okay with preemptively pardoning somebody when we don't even know the details of the potential extent of their crime.
Who can't pardon treason?
An auto pen?
An illegitimate president?
That too.
Or his auto pen.
I mean, especially considering we're documenting here his illegitimacy. Yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
All right, summary of state irregularities and unlawful actions. Did you want to add something else? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
Oh, okay. Unlawful changes to bedrock election integrity and security and voter identification verification procedures engendered widespread and legitimate doubt regarding the integrity and security of the election. These
doubt that still exists. It still exists.
Exactly.
Stop reading so fast. What are you on? 1.5?
Yes, I'm on 2.0.
Stop.
I found some of Hunter Biden's booger sugar in my.
Apparently, you take a breath when there's a period.
Well, we're at 46 minutes and we're
We'll
only
be
on
fine.
page 5. Okay, these deviations from state law and irregularities
No,
permeated.
don't be passive aggressive about it. Read it at normal pace.
Should I pull my accent back out again? I'll do an Ed Martin.
Governor.
He's wearing his Dick Tracy lab coat. Like I'll do like a
Oh,
Colin Dick
man.
Tracy, Dick Tracy, come in, Dick
It's
Tracy.
not a Dick Tracy trench coat. It is a Columbo trench
Columbo?
coat, and he is Columbo, and I love Columbo because he always gets the bad guy.
All right. These deviations from state law and irregularities permeated the electoral process in the challenged states and led to outcomes that were in doubt throughout the post-election period. Unilateral changes in state laws were often advanced by partisan election officials and even court decisions that undermine the electoral process set by the state legislatures. I'm looking at you, Pennsylvania. Examples of partisan and state local officials and court decisions include Wisconsin, where it permitted hundreds of thousands of voters in Milwaukee and Dane counties to claim mail ballots without proof of identification, violating Wisconsin statute 6.87, allowed hundreds of unstaffed and unmonitored ballot drop boxes in Democratic-leaning counties, breaking applicable chain of custody requirements, violating statute 6.87. I'm not going to read all this and craziness. It allowed clerks to unilaterally and unreliably cure mail ballots missing required witness address information, violating 6.87. Allowed mail
violating statute because there's going to be a ton of those.
Yeah, just know that we're not going to read the citations. Allowed mail voting to proceed in nursing homes without the supervision of bipartisan special voting deputies, obstructing the statutorily required process to ensure votes were made without coercion and free from exploitation of vulnerable residents. Where is Justice Gableman?
Was there nothing in court about the Claire Vaughan thing?
So, yeah, I was going to say there's a lot more.
There's a lot more in Wisconsin. That's what's captured here. But he
Spitzer,
says court decisions.
Michael Spitzer Rubenstein, the unfettered access that he had, he had the Wi-Fi code. You know, there's the report from the New Jersey detective that's, you know, was standing guard over the room where when he wasn't allowed to look in, but when he did look in, he saw a ballot printing operation being run there. He had to deliver a UPS package inside. And then he signed sworn affidavits to the extent. I think Patty Murray was the first person to point at that. Patty McMurray, not Patty Murray. But yeah, some crazy.
Patty Murray's the legislator, right?
Patty Murray's a senator in Washington.
Haircut looks like a penis. Yeah.
All right, Michigan unilaterally mailed millions of unsolicited absentee ballot applications to all registered voters. Great job to Patty McMurray again on unlocking that. Gateway Pundit broke that exclusive. Despite being approved by the Michigan courts pursuant to a novel... Wait, did I skip something? Despite being approved by the Michigan courts pursuant to a novel inherent power theory, they unlawfully instructed clerks to presume that signatures on ballot applications or return envelopes were valid, forcing the uncritical acceptance of 3.3 million absentee ballots, allowed, according to witness affidavits, the counting of absentee ballots that had arrived after applicable deadlines, violating Michigan law. Another hat tip to Gateway Pundit for uncovering that video at the TCF Center in Detroit. Failed to adequately secure tabulation machines, which wrongly counted thousands of President Trump votes for candidate Biden in at least one jurisdiction. That's talking about Antrim County, where the case was dismissed. The Bill Bailey, rest in peace, my good friend. The Bill Bailey Antrim County case that was dismissed the day that Matt DePerno and Bill Bailey were supposed to get the MAC addresses for those machines. It's almost like we would have figured out about internet connectivity.
So many stories like that.
Yeah. And by the way, I've brought this up many, many times. So if anybody happens to be listening, you might want to compare J. Alex Halderman's report in Antrim County with his findings in DeKalb County, because they're totally contradictory to one another. Either the Antrim report is accurate and Halderman's rebuttal is not accurate, or DeKalb County was royally effed up during the 2022 Democrat primary. So pick your battles on that one. Can't be both. Arizona permitted registration long past the applicable deadline, violating statute in an obvious abuse of discretion that added thousands of ineligible voters to the rolls, compromising Arizona's elections. Mi Familia Vota v. Hobbs failed to conduct meaningful signature verification in Arizona's largest county, Maricopa, contrary to statute. And the 2019 Secretary of State's Election Procedures Manual, affecting over 1.9 million ballots. That was a continuation there. And failed to comply with chain of custody requirements in collecting ballots from drop boxes, violating statute, as for as many as 200,000 ballots and undermining crucial anti-fraud protections. Arizona. Go ahead.
If anybody from the administration is watching, Mi Familia Vota should have an investigation of their own.
Yeah.
Contact me for details.
Yeah. Maricopa was a sick one that, rolled out the ballot on demand. It's another one of those jurisdictions where they did a risk limiting audit, but they did the audit before all of the ballots were even there to potentially be audited. So, Jan Bryant testified that she was one of the poll workers, that they were bringing ballots in for 10 days after, counting. And then, of course, there's my favorite, the 19 or 20 inch paper ballot that Clay Parikh discovered in 2022. And Scott Jarrett admitted was also in 2020 when he was on the stand. Who's Scott Jarrett? That's this guy.
So what this plan does is that we had 229 polling locations available prior to the plan. And then after the board's vote, I went and performed an analysis to make sure that all those voters had 151 vote anywhere vote centers. We're taking this from those voters had 41 voting locations before these 151. Now they have 151 vote locations that they can choose from. And then with that, we're also going to be providing those voters with the options and the ability to, I'm sorry, I can't do this.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, first, I want to remind the public that
Steve, I think that's Steve Chucre. No, not Steve Chucre. That's the other one. That's Clint Hickman. That's Clint Hickman, isn't it?
I don't know. But I know Jarrett, and he seemed like he was totally telling the truth there, right? Like not at all trying to spin something that he doesn't quite believe in. But didn't he also, and I know that the answer is yes, because you said it right before we went in to the video clip, but didn't he also change his testimony during that trial, Brian?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. He absolutely did change his testimony, and he also refused to get a root cause analysis on it. All right. Hickman is also the guy who had the mysterious egg farm fire. He owns Hickman Egg Farms, and I can't confirm this, but I had firefighters that wanted to go on the record that when they arrived at that fire, there were papers everywhere, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. Those people.
A lot of dead chickens too.
A lot of dead chickens.
Yeah, they killed a lot of animals.
And then interestingly enough, when they did remember when they did the Maricopa audit and they had to go through all that hell to get the routers and look at the routers and have them gone through, they ended up getting a guy to come in. And I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he came in to do it. He's a former, senator in Arizona, and he was trusted and blah, blah, blah. Everybody working with him had to sign NDAs. They could only answer certain questions about the data that was on there, and nobody was allowed to, question them. And, oh, by the way, he also was a lobbyist whose client was Hickman Egg Farms previously. So,
yeah, comment. I mean, so I did, this is back when, right after you and I first did shows together, not coordinated, but, whoops, sorry.
I was doing it. If I see you put something up, I will pull it.
So across the top here, you can see, November 3rd, Fox News called insanely early. February 11th, 462 log files were manually overwritten. March 3rd, 37,686 log files were manually overwritten. May 20th, Secretary Hobbs decertified the machine, and August 2nd, Maricopa violated yet another subpoena. Down here in the details of this, I'll drop the link to this in the chat, but down here in the details of this, you can see the absolute shit show that was the Maricopa audit in terms of Maricopa's obstruction of justice throughout every step of this process. And guess what? Nobody ever got in trouble for it.
Yep. And you know, we can go on and on and on outlining all the issues here, voter roll issues. Where did Elliot Kerwin go? Right, this guy broke into the Arizona voter registration system just to see if he could do it. The FBI raided his home, and then that story just disappeared. That story just poof, gone.
Yeah, many such cases.
Nothing to see here. Yeah, and there's a ton. I mean, the Maricopa audit, you know, on one of my memory cards here, I don't know which one, I've got interviews I did with people that were auditors that were like, yeah, we couldn't talk at the time, but now the NDA's gone. We would see 10 batches in a row that were 90 Biden, 10 Trump, 90 Biden, 10 Trump, 90 Biden, 10 Trump, every single time. So I've got a feeling that all of this has been documented and will come out eventually. I hope.
Yeah, and Just Concern said, any update on Tina Peters? We talked about Tina Peters at the beginning of the show, so get kind of the latest and our theories about what's going on there at the beginning of the show. Also, we're getting ready to do part 2 with Alpha Warrior on the Tina Peters story. It's meant to be a 3-part series. Part 1 is already out, part 2 coming soon, and then part 3 will be like in, I don't know, a week or 10 days or something like that.
All right. Pennsylvania prohibited ballot signature verification for mail-in votes statewide, violating Pennsylvania constitutional statutes, despite being ratified by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and thereby eviscerating Pennsylvania's primary method for detecting and preventing mail-in ballot fraud. Unilaterally extended the deadline for the return of mail-in ballots and admitted violation of 25 PA statute, ordered the canvassing of ballots received after the deadline despite a United States Supreme Court stay, and failed to audit a significant discrepancy showing 205,122 more ballots counted than the total number of voters logged as voting. But that's conspiracy theory. No, it wasn't.
More votes than voters was pretty common when they came up with 81 million real lawful American votes, as Chris would say.
Yeah, you know, hopefully after we get, you know, to the bottom of the 2020 election itself, hopefully we get to the bottom of how the media was so retarded on this. That has to be addressed at some point.
Retarded is being generous.
Yes.
Complicit is more like it, because we're talking about the investigative journalism apparatus institution, the ones with all the credentials and all the awards and all of the things, right?
It turns out they're just lazy and they only regurgitate what the state tells them to. And when I say the state, I mean broadly the government. All right, Georgia placed extra statutory restrictions on the ability of clerks to reject invalid mail-in ballot signatures, failed to utilize available tools for electronically screening signatures, and instead relied only on resource-limited manual review, inviting errors and reducing confidence in the accuracy of the review, and ignored, quote, evidence from witnesses and affidavits sworn under oath reporting violations of chain of custody and signature verification requirements, the possible or even likely submission of large numbers of fraudulent ballots that were counted as voted, the exclusion of poll watchers, and numerous other reported issues with the election. The chairman's report of the Election Law Study Committee. All right, we can end that there. I know there's a certain person listening. If you could send me the clip of Brad Raffensperger on while they were still doing the count, where he said, you know, we only have 2% left to count and Trump's up, and he said there's no way he's going to lose, and then he got disconnected. If you have that clip handy, could you send it to me in one of our messaging devices? Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention to this matter. New Mexico. I'll let you read New Mexico. I'm going to see if that comes in.
New Mexico allowed the use of unsecured, unmonitored drop boxes statewide, violating statute, failed to prevent unlawful ballot harvesting, violating statute, ignored allegations of inadequate signature verification and other potential fraud reported by the chair of New Mexico's Republican Party. Nevada, ignored credible data analysis, identifying tens of thousands of potential duplicates, deceased and non-citizen voters, and ignored undisputed evidence of vote buying, violating Nevada statute. Did we know about that one? Vote buying?
I think that might have been alluded to when Brooke Rollins, Secretary Rollins, talked about the SNAP benefits, that she said we knew they were buying votes. I'm not sure if that's perhaps what that was referring to.
Yeah, I don't know. That feels new to me, which is why I mentioned it. The department also refused to fully and comprehensively investigate other serious allegations of fraud and misconduct, including, as just a few examples, can you scroll down?
Yeah.
As many as 50,000 potentially fraudulent voter registration applications submitted in Michigan by partisan organizations, including GBI Strategies. Done a few shows on GBI Strategies. Errors in a risk limiting audit in Fulton County, Georgia, which resulted in a shift of votes from President Trump to Biden, a determination that over 3,000 ballots in that county were scanned twice, violation of state law requirements for requesting absentee ballots, counting thousands of ballots cast by voters illegally registered pursuant to Georgia law. Errors in computerized election systems in Ware County, Georgia, which likewise shifted votes from President Trump to President Biden. Reports that a trailer with completed ballots from Bethpage, New York, being sent to and left in Pennsylvania with no explanation. I need you to scroll.
All right, let's just finish these bullet points, and then I got that video that
Maricopa County, Arizona's purging of its election management system and movement of 2020 general election data and log files after they received a subpoena from Arizona Senate to have that election system audited. They have never, ever complied with the subpoena. From a lawful subpoena from the Arizona Senate. Maricopa County never complied. Unlawful threats against Wayne County, Michigan's Board of Canvassers and their children, calculated to create pressure to wrongly certify the election results.
Not only that, do you remember what they did to them in Maricopa? And it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise in 2022. They made them in Maricopa, they made them buy all new machines, because they said that they'd been hacked, when the VSTLs specifically said that if you feel like your machines have been compromised, reset the software. Like, they laid out the guidelines on what you're supposed to do if you feel like your machines have been violated. So buying all new machines was not a necessity, but the Board of Supervisors used the routers thing as, kind of blackmail, so to speak, or a bargaining chip. Blackmail is a harsh word, a bargaining chip. And said that unless you give us the funding for these machines, we're not going to hand over the routers. And John Shattuck, by the way, was the guy that was the special master for the routers there. It ended up being beneficial, though, because, during the 2022 investigations, when they were doing logic and accuracy tests, these supposed brand new machines already had pretty high ballot counter. I can't think of the term off the top of my head right now, but it's like a speedometer, right? It tells you the exact amount, or an odometer, excuse me, tells you how many miles. There's a ballot counter ticker on there that in every ballot scan, no matter what the election is, it increments one for every single one.
So I feel like we're miscommunicating to our audience right now. We're just getting mad all over again because all of these things we've known since the election, and they were ignored and dismissed, which is a big part of this letter that we're reading, Joan, which is our glimmer of hope for an actual justice phase as it pertains to this. We're not saying nothing has changed, no accountability will happen. We are recounting the volume of lies across our nation, and it's maddening, and it was maddening. And until there's accountability and justice for it, it will remain maddening.
This is one of my favorite clips from the 2020 election.
Back to our election coverage and another check of the electoral map. Check those 9 states out in gray. Still at this hour, undecided. The presidential race hanging in the balance. They're counting ballots as we speak.
That's right. And one of the states that's a squeaker, state that Joe Biden had high hopes late in the game of flipping this election, but we shall see, is Georgia. And that state's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, is with us now. Mr. Secretary, good morning on a busy morning. I guess the big question is, Hoda?
Yeah, we want to know, when are we going to get your votes? When are we going to find out who's won your state?
Well, we have about 2% left to go. We had great success yesterday. We had 4.7 million voters that voted, record breaker for us, beats the 4.1 in 2016. We also had average wait time of only 2 minutes, statewide average. We have about 2% left to go. And you can see where we are right now with the results that have been reported. I don't think it'll change any of the outcomes, but that's what really people that make those predictions do. What we'll do is get.
Well, that was interesting, though. We were just getting to the good part there because the Secretary of State said they got 2% left to count, Chuck, but he did not think it would change the outcome.
That's interesting.
But then he deferred to the prognosticators, which I think is over to you.
Look, I can just tell you what our models say, and it's where those counties are. They are heavily Democratic counties.
Oh, shit.
Atlanta numbers. So it is going to shrink.
Who cut him?
Perhaps, if I were an arbiter of an election result, I wouldn't want to be the one saying yes. And when we count the vote, it'll change the result. I think his job is to be the umpire.
Well, let's ask Mr. Secretary. Can you hear me now? You just were saying something.
I'm getting phone bombed or something.
Oh, okay. Well, fair. You're a busy guy. It's probably all your friends wanting to know the same thing we want to know, which is when is Georgia going to report its results? But you said something interesting, sir. You said 2% left to count. You didn't think, however, that it would be changing the outcome. Right. Is that based on your analysis of where those votes are outstanding, or are you just guessing it because of the fact that it's only 2%?
We don't guess. What we do is report. We just see where the candidates are right now in both presidential, congressional, senatorial, and you look at how many votes are out there. Even if one of the candidates got 100%, it probably wouldn't be enough to move it one way or the other.
Gotcha.
But it is what it is. We'll just wait till everything's done. The counties are working diligently to get that done today.
Okay. Can I ask you, sir, there was a report from it appears to be from the United States Postal Service data showing a failure to deliver mail ballots from voters across the country on Election Day, including in Georgia, in the Atlanta area. Do you know anything about that?
Well, we have no control over the Postal Service. That's why we went ahead and we implemented absentee ballot drop boxes. We also told everyone that you should not rely on the Postal Service when you get too close to the end of the election. And that's why the absentee ballot drop boxes were available for everyone to drop those off until 7 p.m. last night. And so they've been very well received by our voters.
Well, fair enough. And it is really a question for the Postal Service. But let me ask you, on your side of things, did you notice any suspicious drop off in the amount of absentee ballots that were returned? In other words, is there any reason for you to believe that maybe there could be thousands of ballots that did not get returned in time by the Postal Service?
No, there's nothing that we have, any knowledge of right now. I know that our county election directors in all of our large metropolitan areas reached out to their local postal officer to make sure that we're going to have, really regular service. And we had worked through any questions there might be. They understood the importance of making sure that all those mailed absentee ballots got to where they needed to be to all your county election offices.
And real quick, you said 2% left to count. 10 seconds. Are you going to get it today or no? Yes or no? That's all I got time for.
Yes, you'll get it
all right,
end of the day.
Great. We love a short one-word answer. We're back.
All right. So I just want to see something real quick. When she asked about the mail-in ballots, is she looking at her phone?
I don't know.
Can I ask you, sir, there was a report from it appears to be from the United States Postal Service
data. It is
data.
her phone. Yeah, it's in her hand.
She's reading a report from the United States Postal Service about thousands of ballots that haven't been dropped off. That's something that's printed beforehand and given to her. Again, pure speculation. It sounds like somebody texted that to her, like, "Hey, we have to have cover." When he's like, because he just said we don't guess here. He's not gonna, he can't. There's not enough ballots to overcome the gap right here. And so then she goes to her phone to talk about a USPS report that would have been on paper in front of her. I never caught that until just now.
Yeah, she was definitely looking at her phone.
I never caught that until just now. That when she's running cover, like, is it possible that Trump could lose? Like, he's going to lose. I'm trying to give you an out here. All right. Thank you for getting that over.
20 minutes left.
Yes, let's get back into this. I got to do some maneuvering here. I can't believe I never caught that until now, that she was on the phone for that. All right.
I'll
let you keep going.
These are, These are but a few of the problems, issues, and irregularities that abound in the true history of the election. Yet these do not even touch on the myriad of concerns with the voting technology and systems utilized in the election, about which significant problems have been identified and voiced, but never resolved. As Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said in an April 10th, 2025 meeting of President Trump's cabinet, "We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections." Director Gabbard advised the country on that date that there is more information to be made public on this very subject. In summary, the prosecutions and persecutions of President Trump and far too many others, to include his attorneys, electors, supporters, electors and supporters, as well as Americans across the country for raising these questions and issues, have been a very dark chapter in our history.
All right. Challenges to the election. In view of the above, 18 states, the Republican Party, President Trump, and numerous others filed challenges to the conduct of the election in state and federal court. See Texas v. Pennsylvania. One of the biggest travesties in the history of the Supreme Court not hearing that case, by the way. Likewise, officials in the challenged states called for immediate audits to ensure the legitimacy of the election, as well as a renewed legislative consideration of the appropriate electoral slates in each contested state. By the way, Texas v. Pennsylvania, it had to be this way. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, none of the accountability we're seeing right now would have been possible if President Trump somehow won the 2020 election after Joe Biden was declared for as long as he was, So I know it sucks, but it had to be this way. If we're going to dismantle the system and build it back, it had to be that way. For example, in Wisconsin, 5 elected members of the Wisconsin Assembly Election Committee, including the chairman and vice chairman, acknowledged irrefutable evidence of irregularities in the conduct of the election and, quote, contested the decision to have electors from Wisconsin participate in the National Electoral College until all legal action, end quote, and other challenges had been resolved. From Ron Tussler et al. Examining irregularities in the 2020 election hearing before the Subcommittee on Communications. Okay. Statement from Senator Ron Johnson, chairman of the Subcommittee on Homeland Security, said, noting that, quote, "You were talking about over 200,000 ballots in Wisconsin that were outside of our law that probably, if the law would have been followed, should not have been counted." One of the big issues that was mentioned kind of broadly is the indefinitely confined that they had in Wisconsin, people that don't have to show ID to vote and can automatically get a mail-in ballot because they're incapable of leaving their house. And the big discrepancy in that is one of the election officials came out on TV. I think it might have been the Secretary of State. I don't quote me on that. But a high-ranking election official came out and said, you guys can use COVID to register as indefinitely confined. A whole bunch of people use COVID to register as indefinitely confined. And then a judge said, no, you absolutely cannot. COVID is not a reason to be indefinitely confined, but the damage had already been done at that point. And that number shot up.
And they're not going to take their registration away because that would be voter suppression.
Yep. And that number shot up like tenfold from what it had been historically to like over 200,000. Absolutely criminal. Similar challenges took place in Michigan. See Senator from Michigan, Senator Eric Nesbitt and 39 other legislators calling for a full independent audit prior to certification, recognizing serious allegations that were backed up by sworn affidavits of over 100 Michigan citizens, real people willing to face legal consequences to their lives and livelihoods to stand by their assertions. And that cannot and should not be ignored. Pennsylvania, we had a letter from 80 Pennsylvania state legislators requesting that Pennsylvania's attorney general appoint an independent prosecutor to investigate election irregularities. In Arizona, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Appointments Clause, the Constitution, it is the legislatures that possess plenary power to select electoral college electors. The legislatures had received voluminous evidence and testimony The evidence rises to the level of clear and convincing. It shows the 2020 Arizona elections to be irredeemably flawed. Based upon the clear and convincing nature of the evidence, we respectfully ask that you recognize our desire to reclaim Arizona's Electoral College electors and block the use of any electors from Arizona until such time as the controversy is properly resolved through the pending litigation or a comprehensive forensic audit. In Georgia, they said, stating that the Georgia Senate and House, quote, have already uncovered extensive irregularities and fraud, and requested that Vice President Pence delay and stay Congress's vote of counts of the Electoral College for 12 days to allow for further investigation of fraud, irregularities, and misconduct. We'll see if J6 has something to say about that. In New Mexico, there was a bill to decertify New Mexico's electors, indicating that State Representative Catherine Brown announced that she planned to, quote, a bill to decertify the New Mexico electoral vote for Biden based on, quote, election law violations and questionable vote counting. Catherine Brown as saying, quote, a pattern of premeditated fraud has been seen in a number of states. In New Mexico, we have examples of foul play over multiple elections, specifically in Dona Ana County. I can tell you that New Mexicans are contacting lawmakers in record numbers and asking us to address the fraud. Citizens can accept the outcome of an election that has been fairly conducted, but when cheating is used to manipulate the final tallies, voters have every right to insist that truth and justice prevail. And you pick up from there.
These fundamental challenges to the electoral process advanced by elected officials and ordinary citizens were entirely justified and well-founded. Moreover, in Congress, 7 senators and 4 senators-elect, recognizing the core federal interests at stake and the implicit legitimacy of contingent electors, called for an electoral commission with full investigatory and fact-finding authority to conduct an emergency 10-day audit of the election returns in the disputed state. Joint statement from Senators Cruz, Johnson, Langford, Daines, Kennedy, Blackburn, Braun, Senators-elect Loomis, Marshall, Hagerty, Tuberville, and Ted Cruz. Once completed, the commission's findings would be transmitted to the contested states, which could then convene a special legislative session to certify a change in their vote if necessary.
Okay, so I did not know that call for the 10-day audit came on January 2nd. I thought that was something that was cooked up like on January 5th and 6th. So they had time to plan all of that.
No, I think I remember that because they were all doing media about it. They were talking about the 10-day thing. Ted Cruz in particular, I remember talking about the 10-day thing. He was like the voice of the 10-day thing.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think Holly was too. I think Holly was pretty up there in that. But either way,
he's not named on here.
Well, maybe he wasn't. Who am I thinking of then? Huh.
Langford, maybe. I remember
No.
Langford and Ron Johnson too.
Well, Tuberville I knew for sure, but who was going to be?
All right, we're running out of time. We got to keep going.
Good.
The organization of contingent slates of electors is consistent with the Constitution, applicable law, and longstanding history and tradition. By mid-December 2020, numerous legitimate challenges to the conduct and outcome of the election in the contested states remained unresolved. Under these circumstances, the unfailing tradition in our country is for contingent slates to meet and cast their proposed votes at the appointed time, such that the states and Congress may appropriately recognize the legitimate winner in each state following the conclusion of all pending challenges, or alternatively, determine a failed election and reject all proposed votes from that state. In that event, the outcome of the election would be determined by the state legislatures as provided for in the Constitution. For example, in 1872, in response to allegation of fraud and irregularities, electors in Louisiana submitted 2 competing slates to Congress. See citation. Unable to determine the legitimate winner, Congress rejected both slates. In 1876, several states submitted contingent electors to Congress after numerous allegations of fraud and irregularities. In response, Congress appointed a commission to decide the true and lawful electoral vote after Democrats in 5 different states, South Carolina, Florida, Oregon, Louisiana, and Vermont, sent competing slates to Congress. Act creating electoral commission is the citation. 1877. Congress charged the commission with considering all slates, quote, purporting to be the certificates of electoral votes, regardless of their origin. This included competing slates in 2 states, South Carolina and Vermont, that Democrats submitted without any official backing, but nonetheless asserted should be considered counted based on claims of fraud. Citation. Congress rejected that. Just security that they're citing right there is Norm Eisen, by the way. Congress rejected these competing slates, but neither the federal government nor the states criminally prosecuted any person involved. Next, in 1889, at the first electoral count after the Electoral Count Act's enactment, I almost said reenactment, the Senate president presented a second set of returns from Oregon. Although Congress again rejected this second slate, no prosecution followed. Finally, in 1961, Hawaii certified a slate of electors for then Vice President Richard Nixon based on the state's initial returns. Then Senator Kennedy challenged, requesting a recount and filing a related action in federal court. With these disputes still pending, but without any official state backing, Democrats produced a contingent slate of electors to ensure Hawaii's votes would go to Kennedy should the challenges prove successful. This occurred, and on January 4th, 1961, a newly elected governor certified the Democratic electors, which Congress then accepted as Hawaii's official slate. Following in this bipartisan tradition, Republican electors in 2020, with the assistance, advice, and participation of counsel, prepared a contingent slate for Congress and the states to consider and recognize if, and only if, the pending challenges in the contested states proved successful. The language of the slates substantively mirrored Kennedy's 1960 contingent certification certificate.
Hold on.
What?
Oh, no, that's not it. Okay, never mind. I saw that was Politico, and I was wondering if it was the article Kyle Cheney wrote about this, that he then edited out the part that I cited in my article about this. Like 6 months later, he went and the parts that I cited, he edited them out of his article.
Gotcha. The 2020 contingent certificates, like the 1960 contingent certificates, indicated that the electors were duly and legally appointed and qualified, but lacked official state seals or accompanying certificates of ascertainment. Thus, there was no genuine question that the slates were contingent in character and that the states had not yet recognized the slates as the state's official votes. Indeed, with respect to Pennsylvania and New Mexico, the contingent certificates explicitly recognized that they would become effective only if, as a result of a final non-appealable court order or other proceeding proscribed by law, the contingent electors are ultimately recognized as being the duly and qualified electors. Scroll down.
Wait, was that my... No, that's not my part right there. Okay.
Throughout our history, Democrat and Republican contingent electors have thus been selected and submitted to Congress in connection with a valid exercise of constitutional rights. Not one or any of their supporters have ever been prosecuted. All right, now kick it back up to 1.5 speed.
All right. Weaponization of the justice system against contingent electors and others. And I love this one because it's giving a federal law over state law in certain regards. On January 6th and 7th, 2021, Congress certified President Biden as the 46th president, without addressing or resolving any of the legitimate concerns regarding the integrity of the election or otherwise allowing the states time to do the same. In the aftermath of Biden's inauguration, partisan officials within the federal government and the contested states began a coordinated campaign of retribution against citizens who had exercised their constitutional rights to appropriately question the election. This quote-unquote systematic campaign of injustice, quote, weaponized the legal force of numerous federal law enforcement agencies and the intelligence community against the prior administration's perceived political opponents in the form of investigations, prosecutions, civil enforcement actions, and other related actions. Executive Order 141417. Interesting if you add those up. As part of the attacks on the constitutional order, the Department of Justice ruthlessly prosecuted more than 1,500 individuals associated with the J6 protests in a manner, quote, oriented more towards inflicting political pain than towards pursuing actual justice or legitimate governmental objectives. Worse, the prior administration violated every principle of our constitutional democracy by prosecuting President Trump for his official and entirely appropriate acts as president, all in a transparent and failed effort to undermine his 2024 presidential campaign against the prior administration. The egregious and unlawful prosecution against President Trump also included fake allegations of violations of criminal law based on the activities of contingent electors who sought to ensure the correct outcome of the 2020 presidential election. This prosecution was eventually dismissed. These efforts were also part of a coordinated effort to attack political movement supportive of President Trump using the criminal justice system in a way never seen before in our country's history. Lawfare became the weapon of choice of partisan prosecutors, including those in the Department of Justice, to deprive citizens of fundamental constitutional rights. Hey guys, I'll do the proofreading, guys. Just send it to me, CannCon at CannCon.net.
Just send it to me before you publish it.
Yeah, I got you, bro. At the same time, partisan officials in several of the contested states following the Biden administration's lead began politically motivated investigations and prosecutions against the contingent electors and otherwise who were attorneys for or supporters of the president and the contingent electors for discharging their federal constitutional role. Specifically, Nevada, the state's Democrat Attorney General, publicly announced in 23 that he would not charge anyone associated with the contingent electors, concluding that, quote, "We ascertained that current state statutes did not directly address the conduct in question." Sean Galanka, there's the citation. However, later that year, the Nevada AG reversed course and announced charges against the contingent electors for purportedly offering a false instrument for filing and uttering a forged instrument. Sounds like somebody got a hold of them. The district court dismissed the case for improper venue, which the Nevada AG appealed to the state Supreme Court with oral arguments to be heard this year. I think they just heard them and they reinstated the case, I believe. In the meantime, the state refiled forgery charges not precluded by the statute of limitations against other citizens in Carson City. In Michigan, the state's Democratic Attorney General charged the 16 contingent electors with similar forgery and conspiracy offenses. Pending Lansing's 54A District Court, the court has held preliminary hearings on whether there is sufficient evidence to send the case to a jury trial, referred to as a bind-over. That case was dismissed.
It was dismissed, yeah.
Yeah, this must have been a work in progress because that was dismissed like a month ago. Arizona, the state's Democrat Attorney General by the way, it was dismissed on Michigan's argument, like kind of like Ashe's directed verdict.
Yeah.
The judge said, "I don't need to hear anymore. I heard your arguments and they suck. You prove the point."
52C, yeah.
The state's Democrat Attorney General indicted Arizona's 11 contingent electors, along with multiple others associated with them, on forgery and related charges. On May 19th, 2025, the trial court remanded the case for reconsideration by the grand jury, finding that the state failed, quote, "to make a fair and impartial presentation to the grand jury by not properly instructing the grand jury on the Electoral Count Act and denied defendants a substantial procedural right as guaranteed by Arizona law." By the way, the Attorney General, Chris Mays, there won by 280 votes, I think. So, yeah, definitely has a vested interest in making sure that fraud is not investigated in 2022 or 2020. Georgia, Fulton County's Democrat district attorney in an unlawful conspiracy with an affair partner charged 3 of Georgia's contingent electors, along with President Trump and 15 others associated with his campaign, including attorneys acting in legal advisory roles, in a false, facially improper indictment. The Georgia Court of Appeals disqualified the prosecutor for her conduct with her affair partner, but the case remains on appeal. In the interim, a special prosecutor with the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, there it is, was assigned to consider whether to continue the case against the contingent electors, concluded that the, quote, "matter does not warrant further consideration because, quote, the evidence reveals the elector acted in a manner consistent with his position on representing the concerns of his constituents and in reliance upon the advice of attorneys when he served as an alternate elector. The evidence also indicates Senator Jones did not act with criminal intent, which is an essential element of committing any crime." Then there's the citation. Yeah. The state election commission in Wisconsin twice unanimously rejected a complaint alleging the contingent electors acted unlawfully. In the memorandum accompanying its first rejection of the complaint, the commission attached a letter from the Wisconsin DOJ concluding that the electors did not violate the law and were legitimately trying to preserve President Trump's legal standing as election challenges unfolded. Nonetheless, the Democrat AG of Wisconsin charged 2 attorneys and 1 former Trump campaign operative with conspiracy and acting, quote, "as a party to a crime of forgery based solely on the theory of fake electors." The defendants filed motions to dismiss, which were recently denied. On August 25th, 2025, Wisconsin has not charged any contingent electors. A pardon is appropriate. This is my favorite part. The state's prosecution. Oh, I'll let you read it. Go ahead.
The state's prosecutions, amounting to nothing more than baseless partisan retribution for otherwise lawful conduct, may and should fail on the merits. Notwithstanding that fact, these prosecutions are attempts by partisan state actors to shoehorn fanciful and concocted state law violations onto what are clearly federal constitutional obligations of the 2020 Trump campaign. The same could be said of Tina Peters, by the way.
Yes.
The establishment of the contingent electors, the actions attendant to their roles as presidential electors, their duties under established historical and legal precedent to exercise their responsibilities as electors, all of which are functions of federal, not state law.
Amen. That was my favorite line right there. All of which are functions of federal, not state law. Good.
These constitutionally suspect prosecutions continue to impose intolerable costs on the innocent victims of the prosecution, all of whom must contend with the extraordinary burdens and uncertainty inherent in criminal proceedings, and on the republic as a whole, which suffers grave and irreparable injustice due to these wrongful and legally groundless indictments. Additionally, each of these citizens possessed an inalienable constitutional right to seek congressional redress for the illegal acts and fraud that occurred during the 2020 presidential election. For states to punish or prosecute these individuals now for exercising that individual right fundamentally undermines our constitutional system of government. In sum, the activities of the contingent electors, President Trump's White House chief of staff, his attorneys, and Trump campaign workers and supporters were indisputably federal in character, facilitating Congress's constitutional and statutorily mandated responsibility of receiving and counting electoral votes. Thus, the state's prosecution of this lawful and well-established conduct for the first time in American history does great and unacceptable violence to our nation's
I am.
federalist structure. As the president recognized on the first day of his term, it is time to end this injustice, proclamation cited. That occurred for some of the most egregiously prosecuted by the Democrats' regime of tyranny against President Trump and people in his orbit following 2020. The time has now come to finish the process of national reconciliation and free all remaining victims of political lawfare related to the 2020 presidential election. A pardon recognizing the complete exoneration of contingent electors and all who have been swept into this unjust vendetta against President Trump is appropriate and fully serves the interests of justice.
So that was a long way of rehashing our election claims and basically saying at the end that the electors' cases can't be brought because they're exercising federal statute, their federal duties under federal law, and therefore they can't be prosecuted under state law. And I love that. I love that argument.
Yeah, and that's the point I was making about the same can be said of Tina Peters. The duties, they swear both oaths, right? They swear an oath to the state constitution and the Constitution for the Republic. And so, you have a duty as an elected official. We are over time, so we need to read rants.
All right. Myron 54, the YouTube sucks and needs to pay fund. Hell yeah. Thank you,
Myron.
Good to see you, brother. Awesome show as usual, guys. Also, Brian, the only thing I remember from the morning show is how well you can pronounce anonymity. Congrats.
I know. We're all so proud of you.
I know. Denise Ann. There it is. Proof that Ash and Brian actually hate each other. She just yelled at him.
There.
Thanks for a great show, guys, as always.
I love this theory. This because I'm going to lean into this a little bit.
Let's
really
do it.
Fuck with people.
Let's lean into it. Fucking turd. I'm just kidding. I can't even do it. I can't even if I'm leaning into it. Artsy Joan, thanks for a great show. Topic still frustrates, but we can't give up. God bless and free Tina Peters. Thank you guys all so much. And thank you to Faith and Freedom earlier on.
And hit the thumb.
For the Badlands boost. Be sure to smash that thumb. We've got Spellbreakers coming up, like it's starting like right now, followed by Only Lands tonight at 10:30. I think you said Ship's going to be on it tonight.
Yeah, Shipwreck will be on her first Only Lands tonight, so that's going to be fun. I think Alpha might come in costume again. Always a good time. And the two links that we looked at, so the chart of the Maricopa audit and the timeline of that and the letter that we just read are in the comments, not just in the chat. So if you're watching on replay, you can access those down below in the comments. Please make sure that you hit that thumbs up for us because it helps us quite a bit. And I'll be on OnlyLands later. I don't know if Brian will. He's usually grumped out by then, but
I've got to go. I just put a link in the chat. I'm going to do a show here with my Stuck in the Middle friends. So I'm going to be on with them. I'll let them know that I'm going to try and jump on OnlyLands. So
you should.
Like 50 chance.
Yeah.
All right.
And stay tuned to Badlands because there's a lot of really cool. I mean, Brian and I, before we started the show tonight, are talking about like 3 freaking awesome stories that are coming out soon. So yeah.
All right. See you guys later.
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real, tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post-shave, anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Ancient care, modern truth.
Soft disclosure.